Hello, wonderful interpreters. Thank you again for tuning in and welcome back to our election series. This episode is packed with very important information for you to know as L&I interpreters, as we are now very close to the election. So without further ado, let's get into episode number 3, and please remember to pause the screen at any time whenever you want to read something and to make sure to watch this entire video. This is a picture of a local Safeway gas station sent to me by an interpreter, and we're all feeling the impact of high gas prices, especially interpreters traveling long distances whenever taking appointments from the scheduling system. Getting paid for mileage by L&I would be nice right now. Unfortunately, L&I stopped paying us for mileage almost 2 years ago, influenced of course by WFSE Local 1671 leaders, another one of their brilliant ideas, right? Because, as they have said themselves years ago, interpreters should not be paid to drive, so that they can save money for the state, instead of negotiating on behalf of interpreters, which is what a union is supposed to do. And when their members attacked them for doing so, they just kept on justifying their choices, planning to weather the storm, which really means waiting for interpreters to get tired of complaining and be forced to accept their new reality. This is what WFSE does. Now, coming back to our recent gas prices, one medical provider asked me recently, why is it that he cannot call me directly for video and phone interpretation in order to help his patients save gas money by letting them stay home for some appointments? Well, that's a good question. So what about phone and video interpretation? We strongly defend and prefer in-person interpretation, but we also support these modalities whenever it is appropriate. And so let's explore L&I's current payment policies for phone interpretation to start uncovering the problem here. As you see here, providers must use the CTS language link company for phone interpretation, but only if they're not able to get an interpreter from the scheduling system and cannot call interpreters directly. And that's because L&I has a contract with the Department of Enterprise to cover these appointments, and the DES uses CTS language link. Do you see the problem here? Middlemen companies and state agencies. Now let's see the Department of Enterprise's website, which L&I provides the link for here. And here it is. This is their website, and you can clearly see here how L&I prefers these companies to get these jobs instead of contracting directly with interpreters, exactly like WFSE Local 1671 leaders like it. So you see, both WFSE and L&I prefer these companies to get paid for these jobs, and they have forced you to accept the scheduling system as the primary option for appointments. What? You don't believe me? Alrighty then, you know me, so go grab your popcorn and get ready for a shocking revelation. So here's the deal. The Healthcare Authority also signed a contract recently with Universal Language Service instead of contracting with interpreters directly, so that we can get the money without middlemen companies. And that's the way that WFSE Local 1671 leaders want it, since they are the union negotiating for HCA jobs legally. They preach about fairness, but they prefer one single statewide company to have a monopoly on these appointments. Does that sound familiar, L&I interpreters? And this begs the question, well, what about L&I? Can we still get paid directly for these jobs? The fact is that Washington interpreters made it happen 2 years ago for all of us. See, we met with legislators at the start of the pandemic situation and successfully advocated for L&I to pay us directly for these jobs, and we then created a petition for both Governor Inslee and Joe Sachs with this request. After that, we requested a meeting with L&I's director, Joe Sachs, to discuss our petition, and our advocacy worked, as they granted our petition by allowing L&I interpreters to provide telephone interpretation directly and to get paid in-person rates directly for video appointments. This policy was extended until June 30th, 2021 last year. You can see a breakdown of that policy and the rates that we were getting paid directly from L&I for those services. And of course, we wanted this policy to become permanent. But here is the interesting part. L&I said that they reserved the right to let this policy expire before June 30th last year, as you can see here. And that's exactly what they did. Here they announced the expiration of the temporary policy as of June 30th, establishing CTS Language Link as the only provider for telephone and video interpretation. That's during the summer of last year, when we were still in the middle of lockdowns and the pandemic situation was still raging on. So what happened? Why isn't L&I contracting directly with interpreters for telephone and video appointments? Why did they cancel the temporary policy? And this is the final part of this video, when conspiracy theories become reality. You see, we have always said that there is a conflict of interest between L&I and WFSE. L&I is always implementing the changes that WFSE wants for L&I interpreters without a vote, even when the law has always given L&I other choices like the dual system that we have always advocated for. I have always obtained internal documents from L&I via public disclosure request. I just got this one recently. This here is from Karen Jost on January 2021, before the scheduling system was implemented and before the expiration of the temporary policy allowing us to cover video and telephone appointments to get paid directly. They were working on a decision paper on the policy and if the scheduling system would provide telephone and or video interpretation was to be decided. So the situation was that Interpreting Works was under the impression that the temporary policy applied to them as they were told, so that they would have to integrate telephone and video interpretation into their system. However, L&I clarified to them that the policy didn't apply to them. But still, L&I had to decide whether or not they would extend this policy for interpreters. So this decision paper explained the origins of the temporary policy, explaining how we advocated for the temporary policy through legislators and how they decided to let us provide these services in order to get paid directly. Now, here is the shocking truth. They were analyzing their options for the policy. What you see here is option 1, to let interpreters keep getting video and telephone appointments directly. But I want you to pay attention to the challenges and risks that they listed here. On 1B here, L&I listed as one of the risks, quote, create a confusing dual system for interpreters, end quote. Like, it would be confusing for interpreters to have more appointment options and get paid directly? That doesn't make any sense, right? Now, here is the kicker. Right below challenge risk number 2, it says here that letting interpreters provide services directly to clients could hinder the success of the scheduling system and make it more difficult to force interpreters to use the scheduling system and pull back the temporary policy. And finally, they were worried that interpreters would go back to the legislators to demand this policy to be implemented outside of the scheduling system. So if L&I is so neutral like they say, then why are they admitting to forcing interpreters to use the scheduling system that WFSE implemented without a vote as the primary option for appointments, when the law gave L&I more choices like the dual system we have been advocating for? So there you have it. See, this is why I love doing this. There you have it. L&I clearly says here that their plan was to force interpreters to use the system while admitting that they were not in favor of the dual system. They're not interested in interpreters having more appointment options. No. But they were doing everything in their power to protect WFSE's agenda. Now you see the evidence. WFSE and L&I with the same interests. A massive conflict of interests, like I have always told you. In closing, I want you to know that hopefully in a few more weeks, we're gonna know when we're having the election. It's been a challenging process, but we are working with PERC diligently in order to have a date as soon as possible, and we have made a lot of progress. You see, we can't wait to win this election and have the dual system that the majority of L&I interpreters want. Interestingly, it looks like some leaders from this organization decided to endorse WFSE. This is Interpreters Rising, the union that failed to submit their cards on time and didn't even have enough support to be on the ballot. So they withdrew from the election process before PERC could make it official. Yeah, those guys. It's really weird how they always hated WFSE for making sure that L&I wouldn't work with small agency owners anymore, because as you know, most of their leaders, if not all, are agency owners. Nothing wrong with that, but they hated WFSE for it, right? But now they are openly supporting their oppressors and going back to them. You know what's funny? I was with WFSE and gave him a chance a few years ago, way before L&I implemented any of these changes, and these leaders hated me for doing that. However, everybody knows that I fought WFSE in the inside for wanting to punish all agency owners and independent interpreters because of a few bad apples. After learning that WFSE wouldn't change, I learned my lesson. I left them 2 years ago, opted out of their union, we started Washington interpreters, and now we're about to win this election. Well, to each their own. See, everybody's free to do whatever they want. We're just waiting to win this election so that we can implement a dual system with options for everyone, free from WFSE and their tricks and monopolies. So stay tuned for more of our live streams, Zoom and in-person meetings coming to your area very soon. Please like, comment, and subscribe to our channel in order to keep on getting more relevant information for our interpreting community. See you in the next video. Do not lose hope, and as always, God bless.